Thank you, Maggie. I probably could have done it much longer, and there is a lot to cover, but you can look up for Maggie at the breakout, and there is a lot of research from Focusrite. So if you're in the industry, it's a very good resource to find trends when you try to target your your market, the entry strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, Maggie, I sure hope you brought a bathing suit because we're going to Eilat also on Wednesday.
In my bag.
Okay, in your bag, okay. Okay, just now. Okay, so next panel. I'd like to call the panelists. Jeff Pan is the moderator, and then I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself. Yaniv, Jens, Nadav, Carl, and Susan, if you can just sit according to your picture. So Susan, if you can sit all the way here on the left. The only woman, but still. We don't want anybody to get confused. So Jeff going to moderate this panel. Jeff is the CEO of an OTA based in Singapore in Myanmar called Fly Maya. Mia or Maya? M-Y-A. Maya. Mia. They have about 300 employees, and it's relatively small, but obviously in a very different jurisdiction. Jeff spent his career with Booking.com in the past, and he also has some ties to the Israeli market because he had a startup that was in the first batch of El Al cockpit CVC arm. So he has a warm spot for Israel. So please join me by welcoming the panel and Jeff. Thank you very much.
So, Shalom. Bruchim לבאים לתל אביב. כיף לראות אתכם פה. So, tours and activities. Yesterday, Ram treated us to a guided tour of Jerusalem, and we learned two things about Israelis. The first thing is that they really enjoy talking about Jerusalem residents and whether they pay taxes. And the second thing is that if you take an Israeli person to a hummus restaurant, you should never take them to a hummus restaurant that has nice tablecloth. So these are the things that we learned about Israelis from tours and activities. So hopefully in this panel, you'll have an opportunity to learn about the tours and activities market. So we have some really esteemed industry experts that hopefully will give you their perspective from their facet. Carl, we'll start with you. How did you start your career in travel?
A short version of that is we started music festivals in South Africa, built out sponsorship companies, and then slowly started going into tech, merchant companies, and then eventually built our own ticketing company. And if you can do 20,000 people at a festival, we moved into doing things like attractions, like zoos and other attractions, and eventually started putting in tenders for the big national parks, starting to run their gates and activities, and that becomes millions of people in South Africa. And what we're busy with now is to expand that into doing more bookings around it, not just the attractions, but hotels, flights, opening it up completely.
Great. So you've dominated the attractions market in South Africa, and then next we have Susan Black from CIE Tours. And what is CIE Tours for the audience?
So CIE Tours is what I like to say an 87-year-old startup, meaning it's owned by the government of Ireland. It does outbound tours to Ireland and the UK, about $150 million, 50,000, mainly from the US and Canada, but there are other source markets, Australia, and we're just starting an API feed in India, and there are other source markets bringing people into the destination of Ireland and Britain. The reason I call it a startup is because as part of the executive team, the new executive team that was formed 3 years ago, we're charged with doubling revenues from, we started actually tripling at 100 million when I started 3 years ago. We're now at 150 million, and in 5 years we'll be at 300 million. So that's pretty ambitious for an 87-year-old company owned by the government. So there are some challenges there, but there are some great opportunities as well. And we'll talk about it more, but it really has to do with technology and how we leverage that.
And I understand you've also worked with other tour operators as well.
So before that, I was Chief Marketing Officer of American Express Vacations, Travel Impressions, which some of you may have heard of, Liberty Travel GoGo prior to its purchase by Flight Center, and a startup, one of 8 that I was with, called CheapCaribbean.com, which grew to $2 billion and was sold to Bain and Apple Leisure Group. So covering the spectrum, not only in Ireland and Britain, but quite frankly, around the world.
And so the people in the audience have obviously read about the significant money pouring into this segment. When did you personally start to feel the shift?
We started seeing a huge interest in attractions and tours and trying to aggregate them, I would say, in the past 3 to 5 years, really heightened in the last 3 years. Maggie did a great tee-up, loved your slides, but there's been a great investment where she said, big investments in certain winners. We see that in the tours and attractions market. And you'll see even events now, Arrival and other ones that are really focused on that. And we're seeing platforms such as Tour Radar, Global Journeys, and a number of others which are getting tremendous funding because they're aggregating these multi-day tours, which is hard to do. So there's a lot of demand for it, and now we're seeing a lot of investment poured into that area.
Great. And our next panelist has built a bit of a monopoly on the restaurant industry in Tel Aviv. Tell us what Tabit does.
So Tabit is a restaurant technology platform. We provide basically a 360 solution for restaurant operation. We started out with providing tools for servers, owners. Then we moved to greeters, which is host station, and kitchen display systems. These days, what we do is we take, and I'm going to explain it later in my presentation, we take all the magnificent cloud and great tools we've built for restaurants, and we put them as a layer on top of the property management systems for hotels.
Okay, and so with the integrations and connectivity that you've done with hotels, what is the main benefit to the end consumer?
So think about it as going from Windows or maybe DOS into iPhone. Just think about this conversion, right? Now think about yourself as an end consumer. You used to use your mobile device to pay with it, right? To walk with it, to put your preferences if you like gluten-free food or you like to sit near the window in a restaurant. And now you get all this information in the hotel database, right? And it's connected to a restaurant that, by the way, does not have to have any business connection with the hotel.
And our next guest is responsible for promoting the Mekong region of Southeast Asia as a tourism destination. Let's welcome Jens Reinhardt, the CEO of MTCO. And Jens, just to help the audience understand, what is Mekong?
Well, the Mekong is a river that flows through 6 countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China. And it's a regional tourism collaboration by the 6 governments to promote the region as a single tourism destination, build capacity, and work with private and public sector.
And your organization, is it public, is it private?
It's government owned, so basically my contract is signed by 6 tourism ministers, which is, I think, quite unique. And I deal with them too. I think from our standpoint, obviously, people always ask me, how can you work with 6 governments? And some of them are military dictatorships from communist, everything in between. So I think in the end, it's, how do you create value for the public and the private sector? And I think we've created some interesting programs and initiatives that I think also focuses on what many people call tours and activities, but we try to call it more experiences.
And we've read a lot about a lot of money pouring into tours and activities, specifically in Asia with Klook and Veltra and KKday. Have you personally seen or felt any shifts or any changes on the ground?
Yeah, I think these platforms, if it's Klook, there are other ones on the sharing economy side, like Trip out of Vietnam, obviously make it possible for consumers to explore destinations that have been a little bit off the radar or hard to reach, And since you're in Myanmar, you know what I'm talking about. So I think these these services make it able for consumers to not only connect with new destinations, but also to connect with local communities.
Let's welcome our next guest, the Vice President of New York Sightseeing, Yaniv. And tell me a little bit about New York Sightseeing.
Right. Boker Tov, everybody. So New York Sightseeing, it's one of the largest privately owned double-decker bus tour. So we are part of our division. It's City Sightseeing Worldwide, which is in 150 different countries. We also operate the Sightseeing Pass, which is a multi-city pass for attractions. We're currently now in 16 different cities. We actually just launched our first European city 2 weeks ago in Spain. And City Expert, as I've been listed over here, we also providing concierge services in over 80 hotels in New York City on the ground. So connected to all our POS systems, we're able to basically offer the in-house products that we have, and we also we offer in, as a receptive operators, hundreds, thousands actually of products worldwide in a sense.
And you actually already work very closely with a lot of the major players that we read about in tourism activities. How would you define your relationship with them? Have you benefited? Do you see them as a threat?
No, I mean, for us, it's first and foremost is our product that we want to sell. So the Expedia of the world, the Viators, and so forth. Of course, they are extremely important player for us. They're offering and selling our in-house product. Aside from that, we're competing with them in the sense of the clients that are coming into New York City and buying on the ground and prior product. We still have an unbelievable relationship, and I believe Rom mentioned it in the beginning. In our industry, I think everybody's trying to really get along as much as we have competition, because the bottom line is it is going to benefit everybody in the future.
And I think the Focusrite had a research where 72% of all suppliers invest less than $5,000 per year on their technology, but you were on the forefront and you've been investing heavily in technology for a while. What are some of the cutting edge ways that you use data and technology for your business?
Right, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, we noticed a little over 5 years ago that the way of doing business with the regular pen and paper vouchers or even the online vouchers just doesn't do it for the customers. There's a lot of customers, especially the new generation, they like to use in their mobile phones. And you can't just tell them, print this voucher at home. They don't want to print the voucher at home. They want to just buy it right now and get into the attraction right now. So we heavily invested in technology internally, and we connected with another company called Redeem. And so all those thousands of products that we offer in worldwide, mainly nationwide now, is connected via one QR code. And aside from that, what we can do besides just doing an instant mobile connection, we're actually able to offer and combine different packages and passes, so it doesn't have to end in one specific product. We have the broader offering multi-products to the end users.
Cool, Jens. And I understand you've been doing some really interesting things with technology as well?
Yeah, so obviously, building a brand for 6 countries is quite difficult. And so what we figured out is that the brand basically is made up of the experiences that people have in the destinations. And so we thought, if we can aggregate all these experiences that people have, and people are sharing this content on social media, I think that will inspire the people to visit the destinations. So what we've done is we partner with a company called Chameleon Strategies that have developed a social commerce technology called Invoke, where we are now aggregating all this content that people are sharing on social media and then connecting it to the experiences, regardless of size or type. So you may see a picture, someone have maybe shared something at Inle Lake in Myanmar, and but if you see it just on Instagram, you may not know where it is. You may not be able to book it, So the booking channels might be the business directly, or it could be intermediaries like Klook, like Expedia, like Booking, like Agoda, like whoever. So in that way, we're leveraging technology to bridge that gap between inspiration and purchase.
And Nadav, I think Maggie mentioned that a hotel's most underutilized resource is their own guests. And I think you've actually presented some really interesting use cases where you can increase the revenue of hotels and restaurants on in-stay services. What are some of the use cases that you've been able to demonstrate?
Yeah, so if you think about it, maybe your hotel does not have any F&B outlets, right? But you want your guests to experience the city. You want them to come back. You want them to talk about the experience they've been, experienced in the hotel and the vacation. So now you can collaborate with other tours, restaurants, bars in your city and provide your guests with real-time data about the place, first of all. Second of all, when they would walk into this place, they can charge the room. We can actually check if they have any credits on the room. They can actually see on the server tablet or in their iPhone the specific rates of conversion through their own bank account. So this is just one of the many things, the cool things you can do when you integrate deeply into PMSs.
And so, Carl, with you, you've dominated attractions, and now I understand you're actually leveraging your user base and those eyeballs into bigger things, right?
Yes, yeah. So in essence, what we're doing is, if you start with a transaction right there, is we partnered with the Israeli company to give us that platform, and what dawned on us is that you can convert these guys into their own OTAs. So we're busy with projects to convert national parks into their own OTA, where we do the platform and the fulfillment and the packaging around that and distributing that. So that's happening as we speak. But whilst we're busy with that, we may as well deploy other OTAs. So we've just launched our own OTAs on the same platform in South Africa, launched that a week or two ago. So the first one's live. And what we also noticed is that, I'm not a travel expert, but the thing is, my background is building communities, festival communities, and there's a trend that if you curate it really well and you cater specifically for that, then you put together different packages that's relevant and people book it. So we're deploying in the next 2 months Afrikaans-based OTA, one of the first ones in South Africa. And with the tech that we've got now is we can deploy many of these quickly. There's a deployment going out in Dubai, and it's the same tech that actually powers Smart Air in Israel. So it's really exciting.
So that's actually noteworthy. So most OTAs in this room are going into the tours and attractions business. You're actually doing the opposite. Your tours and attractions going into OTAs.
Yeah, the thing that interested me on that is if you own that ticket, you actually own the front door. That's the key that starts the transaction. And now you've got the guy. So now I can sell him hamburgers or tickets or vouchers. It's festival technology. It's not very sophisticated, but it works.
And what is your advantage that you believe you have over global OTAs that will try and increase their presence?
We own the inventory. They must come and get it from us.
Okay. And Susan, I understand you've done a tremendous amount with data and personalization as well.
I'm sorry, with
I understand that you've done a tremendous amount with data and personalization and increasing.
Yeah, to grow a business, to triple it in 5 years, you've got to break some things, and you've got to really think about how you're going to do things differently and be innovative. And in fact, in our strategy, we have 23 strategic initiatives. Every last one has to do with technology. Most of them have to do with partnering with travel tech. It's the only way to grow. So in terms of personalization, we first had to find out who our customer was. And in 87 years, although everybody had an opinion, we actually contracted with an agency to find out who our personas were so we could match both product with the right persona, why they were going to Ireland, why they were going to the UK. And once we found that out, heritage seekers, not surprisingly, is a big number, a big part of that. 40 million in the US identify as Irish. We were able to build new product, both in terms of multi-day escorted tours, about the tours and attractions we were selecting, who we partnered with Ancestry and DNAs and curated heritage quite a lot, and also build a search engine, part of our new website that's being launched in September that we're doing with Ogilvy, that really enables people to get into a database of 1,800 surnames, of Irish surnames, so they can find which of our 62 tours of Ireland will best suit a Murphy or an O'Neill or someone else. So there's a lot of moving parts, but partnering and finding the right solution providers to do that, because we don't want to do that ourselves. We want to partner. That's one of the reasons I'm here, is to find who are these solution providers, who's cutting edge, where can our company invest, both as a supplier and a vendor, and even an investment, to really differentiate the experience, because as you know, there's a number of operators of multi-day tours, and we have to do things to differentiate our brand, our product, the experience, the type of tours you have, and you have to really know the customer and how that customer is going to interact with you, both in terms of the product and in terms of the technology they choose to use.
So you've done quite well with when an Irish American will search at last name, you will actually offer a customized tour on that specific region in Ireland. So you also started working with multi-day tour OTAs like Tour Radar, correct?
Yep. So that's what I referred to in the beginning. There is really an abundance, a plethora right now of new platforms that are coming in. Tour Radar is probably the leading one, but there are others. Every day I discover something new. When I go to Focusrite or I go to one of the other conferences, I'm like, oh my God, there's a new one. And it's great because they're aggregating this area that has not been aggregated. But I will tell you the secret of it, and there's, you know, it's what I say about hypergrowth for anything, and it's all about APIs. It's making them fast, it's making them easy, it's making it so that it doesn't take 6 months to do connectivity. You can do it in a few hours or a couple of weeks, and that's really hard. No one has really broken that code. Everybody has easy APIs. Well, it's easy until you try to do it. And it's all about prioritization, because companies have a lot of priorities on their tech list. And in order to grow, you really need to have a great API strategy.
So with that, while you've connected to some of these OTAs with an API and you've noticed an increase in business, have you also noticed your customer acquisition costs going up as well?
No, it's actually going down.
Okay.
How cool is that?
Okay.
So it actually, because it's such a crowded and it's really hard to compete, buying the keywords and really investing in words. We're competing against not only these new intermediaries, but we're competing against, Expedia, and everybody's buying Irish vacations, hello. The cost of acquisition is less because the way they monetize is, so far, until they raise the rates, they do SEO better than anyone else, and that's really where a lot of their investment comes in terms of the engineering and algorithms. They're a very, very good partner. They're a good intermediary. We love all our intermediaries. We love our travel agents too. But they're a very cost-effective additional channel to go through.
And Yaniv, do you have the same opinion where you see a decrease in customer acquisition, or do you see an increase in customer acquisition?
We definitely seen a decrease in a sense, but depends on how you're looking at it. We have a different ways of trying to obtain our customers. We invested more money, of course, in online, tried to capture the guests, prior to them arriving in New York, because we all know once they arrive in the destination, especially a city like New York City, it's like a zoo. There's so many companies out there that can grab them on the streets or through the hotels or through many different channels. So you have to really be smart in offering them something prior to their arrival, or work with specific operators on the ground that are going to be able to provide your services rather than offering their competition.
Okay. So the common theme is that all of you are making very heavy investments into technology, but your tech is only going to be as good as the APIs that you're given. So what are some of the things that you can't do now that you wish you could do, and where do you see the tech going in 5 years?
Right. So for us in New York City, just because we started a couple of years ago, we integrated with every single attractions and tour in New York City. So we're able to offer a standalone product, the packages or the passes, the multi-day passes. When we expanded to different cities, our biggest challenge is how many operators and the small mom and pop companies that you need to integrate with. First and foremost, they don't have the funds to integrate with you. Secondly, they don't believe in what you do. They still, doesn't believe in 100% technology and doesn't see the future there yet. So the biggest issue and challenge for us is how we're going to be able to offer thousands of products worldwide and be able to connect with them directly without trying to do a secondary redeem voucher some sort.
Yeah. Jens, where do you see the tech going? What are some of your pain points now?
Well, I think the pain points are probably more non-tech, I would say. In our case, trying to find these experiences and being able to communicate with them and engage with them, that's probably one of the hardest thing. On the tech side then is basically integrating them into viable technology, but the good thing is that there is technology out there that can do that, But there's a lot of education and communication that needs to be done. So we're doing a lot of workshops that are sometimes supported by development organizations. So that's a key, to go into these communities and then having these communities engage and own basically the program themselves.
Nadav?
So I think that I would say winter is here, and that there is a big fight between aggregators and the hotel brands, right? Restaurant brands, chains. And what we believe will be in 5 years that they will just keep to live together. And we want to see ourselves providing tools for the brands. So you can actually put in your website, your app, different... whoa. Winter is coming. Yeah. So you can actually put your... Is here, yeah. So you can put reservation things, online ordering stuff on your website.
Carl, Susan, same question.
Very quickly, from our side, we're pushing very strongly in not just doing the gate tickets, but going into different attractions, shark diving, safaris, all of that. So Africa lends itself to that, and we're also doubling down on the actual platform behind it, making it slicker, quicker.
I can make it really quickly. Did you see Maggie's slide on where the investments are? AI, data, analytics? That's it. That's the stuff that keeps me up at night, because there needs to be much better solutions for smaller companies, less than billions of dollars, and ways to access and to extract the data so that we can sell more.
Great. So here's a question that keeps me up at night. Maggie, is there a space for small and medium OTAs in the future?
This is the last panel of the day, so anybody want to ask questions?
So I'll skip it? Okay, I'll skip that one. How was Klook able to connect and scale in an effective way with all the small tours and attraction supplier? I understand that you work with quite a bit of suppliers.
Well, I mean, we don't do individual tours per se. We aggregate, but we do quite a large business in both the FIT and private driver, in addition to escorted tours. So we are looking at Klook, and we are looking at others in terms of pushing it out that way. I mean, it all goes back to B2B2C. It's all going back to aggregating.
Great. And I think, Jens, you actually manage quite a bit of suppliers as well, right?
Yeah, sure. I think on the technology side for us, we'd like to aggregate the aggregators because they've done kind of like the hard work, which we don't have the resources to do. So I mean, Klook could be one of the ones that we look to work with to find these small businesses, and obviously they have a platform to then communicate with them more effectively than we could.
And Niv, I think you work with Klook, right?
We are, but I think it's overall, when you're looking at hotel beds, when you're looking at tickets, Viator, all the experience of the world of the big players, each and every one of them connected to thousands and ten of thousands of product. If each and every one of them were connected directly to one QR code, they can actually be shared among each other, can keep their contracting, can keep their rates, but if every single one of them will put the effort to actually be connected, it will benefit the entire organization. We're actually working with hotel beds to figure out exactly how we're going to be able to provide some of our technology to benefit their conversion of a paper voucher into a mobile ticket.
Right. And I guess as travel OTAs are growing, last question, how should the travel operators keep their share and prevent being overrun as with the hotel industry? Do any of you see yourselves being commoditized?
Not so much commoditized, especially when you're establishing a brand and what that brand promises and what you're offering. However, it's really being dwarfed. I mean, we don't have the budgets of an OTA, so we could be the best thing since sliced bread. But if you can't get that message out, it's very difficult. I believe that there will be a day very, very soon. I keep reading Focusrite and looking to see when that's going to be, when API connectivity will be able to harness the uniqueness of companies such as mine, and there are many others in the United States Tour Operators Association, there's many, but it's all going to be connectivity. And for those companies that are not cutting edge, that are not investing in this type of technology, they will be left in the dust. I don't care how good their product is, they won't be able to distribute.
Great. Thank you very much to the panel as well. So, cheers.
Thanks, Jeff.